In a world where movie trailers are epic, one man named Scott Rummell is destined for greatness. It all starts now on Stay Tuned. Welcome to Stay Tuned, the show for animation lovers, recorded live on Twitch, broadcast on YouTube, and proudly streaming on Patreon. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, I'm your host, Phil Machi. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I am very excited to announce that the ruler of Atlantis himself, voice actor Scott Rummell, is here. All that, and you'll have a chance to share your thoughts, questions, and opinions with me for a live Q&A after the show. Tonight's episode of Stay Tuned is sponsored by Austin Film Meet. Got an interest in pursuing film, video, or new media? Austin Film Meet is one of the most well-loved communities for independent film in Austin, Texas, utilizing events and programs to bring creative people together. Creatives of all types are welcome, whether you're an actor, director, writer, or any other artist. AFM is focused on raising skill levels and professionalism through increased awareness, education, and experience. Learn more about their upcoming events and more today at austinfilmmeet.com. A veteran voice actor, Scott Rummell is best known for his countless film trailers and promotional movie campaigns. In 2001, he helped bring Aquaman to life in the Justice League animated series, which continued on with Justice League Unlimited. Scott Rummell is here to talk Disneyland, movie trailers, and of course, Aquaman in just a few moments. But first, this. Scott Rummell, welcome to Stay Tuned.
Thanks, Phil. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for asking. So my main motivation in bringing you here today was your work on the animated Justice League show, and you played one of my personal favorite heroes, Aquaman. This wasn't just the Aquaman from the old Super Friends show. This was a very strong, very proud ruler of the seas. So how did you approach a character with such bravado?
Well, when I saw that picture of Aquaman, which is the first thing they show us this beautiful picture of this guy with this flowing golden hair. And, oh, yeah, you've got the maquette right there. Look at that. They picked me because I look like the character, not because I sound like him.
Right. You've got the beard and everything.
Yes. But
and the harpoon hand and everything.
To be honest with you, I could tell he was, this is a commanding looking figure. I mean, this guy is large and in charge. And,
yes.
Sometimes when you just look at the character, when you look at the picture, just something comes into your head. You start thinking, okay, what would this guy sound like? So it was very interesting because I think I read for the character with my agents first, and then Andrea Romano, who was the director of our show.
Yes.
Wonderful lady who has won countless Emmys for her directing. She had me in and, we looked at the picture and we talked about it, and it just came to me. I said, I am the born ruler of Atlantis. I am Aquaman. And she said, that's the guy right there. That's the guy we want. So
she knows when she hears a voice, she knows right there on the spot.
So it was very fun to get that because I had dreamed of doing animation too as a kid. I watched all this stuff and I studied with Dawes Butler. He was my teacher and mentor. And for those of you that don't know who Dawes was, he was Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Quick Draw McGraw, Snagglepuss, Elroy Jetson, Captain Crunch. I mean, he was hundreds of characters that I grew up with. And I really thought that I would have a big career in animation. I would do little bit roles here and there on different cartoons and stuff, but my commercial career took off so much that it just didn't happen for me. And something I'll tell you, I admire the animation voices so much, and many of the top animation men and women are my friends, and I've known them for 30 years. And there's just an incredible amount of talent that these folks have.
Absolutely.
And I remember, when Dawes was doing cartoons, like he was doing Quick Draw McGraw,
Sure.
but he was also playing Baba Louie, his sidekick. And he could just go back and forth instantly between the voices, and not just the voices, but the character, the attitudes, everything. And he was just brilliant. In fact, Dawes introduced me to Mel Blanc.
Oh, wow.
And I was talking to Mel Blanc on the phone one day, and he goes, "Do you know how lucky you are to study with Dawes?" He goes, "I can't do that stuff." He said, "I can't just go back from character to character. I stop and find the new character." And today, not to take anything away from Mel, because he was obviously brilliant and
sure, of course,
just a cherished voice. But a lot of these guys, that's just the way their heads work. They work so quickly. And this is the thing that Dawes taught me. You never really think of these things as voices. You would say, "How do you do that voice?" And he would say, "What do you mean? That's not a voice. That's a complete character. It's a
mindset.
This guy has different subtext, and he thinks and feels differently than the other characters." And so it was fantastic. Nancy Cartwright was studying with Dawes when I was studying with him, and Bill Farmer, who's the voice of Goofy, and many great people studied with Dawes. It was kind of like going to Harvard for voiceover.
Wow.
If you studied with Dawes, it was a nice little thing on your resume.
Oh, really?
I started wanting to do more animation. I took some animation workshops and learned some good stuff. But career paths are different for everybody.
Sure.
But then I was able to do a few little things on Rugrats.
Okay.
Which was very fun. I read for this kind of funny TV announcer, which was like, "The Dummy Bears will be back in a moment," that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So the kids would be watching TV and hear me saying, chocolate cheese," or, whatever it was.
So how is recording work for a cartoon then? How does it different from doing commercial work?
It's very time intensive. You drive to wherever they're recording, then you have a table reading with all of the cast. So you really work through kind of how it's going to work and play out. Then you go in and you sit down and you do one pass of that episode. Then you take a break for lunch or whatever. And then while you're having lunch with the other actors and so forth, Andrea and Bruce Timm and whoever else was on the production staff would listen back, and then they'd figure out what they needed to work on. And then you would do another read of the show. So 2 reads. So now you've got pretty much half of a day doing one episode. And then it takes them back then it took them about a year to animate.
Right.
So then they'd call you back to do your ADR. So you do your fight scenes where you're taking a punch, or, hitting somebody or screaming or whatever. It would just tear up my voice for the next day.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because you really get into these characters,
Sure.
and if you're doing a yell or a fight or whatever, you are going to use your voice in ways you don't normally use it to do a commercial or a promo. So they were so gracious, because they knew that I was doing movie trailers and stuff, that they would book me to do all my yells and screams at the end of the day on Friday, so that my voice would be able to recover by Monday.
Oh, that was nice of them. I can definitely attest to what you're saying. I did a audition late last year for a video game, and at the end of the readings I did, he had me do, like you said, the ADR stuff. It was a fighting game, so a lot of the ADR was just very guttural and physical, and by the time I was done with it, I started kind of feeling it in my abdominal.
Oh yeah, those things. And when you're doing like a action hero like Aquaman, and there's lots of, whether it be struggles or whatever it is, you're exactly right. It's a guttural place. And I have to say, that's where it really does get physical for a voice actor, because
Sure.
As Dawes would teach us, your voice changes with your physical action. He was a very small guy. He was like maybe 5 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And here he's playing this, 8-foot Yogi Bear. So he would show me that he would do like this big arm spread and put his chest up high and make himself as tall as he could be, and hey, boo boo, and he tried to open up his resonating chamber. And when he was playing like Elroy Jetson, and he was little, oh, my dog Astro, that kind of a thing
Yeah.
so he physically would change. And so I've seen all these voice actors do this stuff. And that's in animation when it really does start to bridge that gap, because you have to be physically involved, because the voice absolutely changes when you're physically involved.
Absolutely. And I think another good example of that is Mark Hamill. Whenever he would do his Joker voice, he would just stand up and really get into it.
And I can tell you a funny Mark Hamill story if you want to hear it.
I always want to hear a funny Mark Hamill story.
Mark's a great guy. So Mark and I used to be at the same studio every week, and I used to see him in the lunchroom, and we would chat about this and that, and, just nice conversation and very relaxed. But when I got to the studio at Warner Brothers to do the Justice League show the very first day, Mark came up to me and he had an intensity about him. And he's like, Scott, tell me what you know about Aquaman. And I'm like, well, I know how he sounds. And he's like, oh, no. And he looked at Andre and said, I need a minimum half hour with Scott to bring him up to speed on Aquaman. And he said, well, Mark, we don't have a half an hour. You can have until we start recording. And he said, okay. And he started just telling me the history of Aquaman, his evil brother Orm, and the history of Atlantis and all this stuff. And it was just intense. It was like, it was great because I was getting tons of subtext, because really I had just read the script, but he just knew everything about not just Aquaman, but every character. He was just marinated in the whole world of action heroes and comics. And,
he loves it. He loves it. It
was
stuff.
Very, really telling to understand that when he was doing a character like the Joker, or on our show that first day he was playing Solomon Grundy.
Yep.
Again, there's a very physical character. He would make himself kind of large and have this big voice. But it was fascinating because it was a world that I didn't live in. And almost instantly, like if you had Googled Scott Rummell before, you'd get various commercials or my website or whatever. But after this show came out, if you put in Scott Rummell for a number of years, Aquaman. And I just didn't really understand the fan base was so intense.
Very passionate fan base. Yeah.
They invited me to come down to Comic-Con and sign some autographs. So I said, oh, this would be fun. This would be like a comic show and whatever. I had no idea about Comic-Con.
It's huge.
And I know people are thinking that I'm crazy, but it just wasn't my world. And then all of a sudden I'm down there and there's 100,000 people and there's a 2.5 hour line for, I think it was me and Kevin Conroy and some of the other characters that were signing autographs. And we signed autographs for 2.5 hours. I just couldn't even believe how crazy in love with these characters the fan base is. So I was experiencing things I'd never experienced. Like I had one guy come up to me and say, okay, in episode 4, you had to cut off your own arm. And I just don't understand how you did that. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I know you had to cut off your own arm to save your child, but what did you use? Did you use sharp coral? And I went, yeah, that's exactly what I used. But they were so into the storylines, and
that's funny.
It was fun to be able to do that character. And at the time, my boys were at the perfect age because they had just known Dad to do commercials or, whatever, right? And now all of a sudden their dad was Aquaman. So they had a bit of bragging rights, and it was very fun for them. And, it was just a very cool period. They were preteen and young teen, and so it was just right in their wheelhouse. It probably was the most special time. They think it's cool that they'll be in a theater and hear my voice or watch TV and hear me on a movie trailer, but there was something really special about the honor of being Aquaman.
That's awesome to hear. Really, it's nice to hear people who are involved. It has an effect on them as well as the fans, obviously. I'm really curious, though, about the Mark Hamill context story. So they don't really give you a lot of history or motivation before you go and read?
Well, no, they always offer a description. So there's a short, probably paragraph of description of who this character is.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, but it's not a complete history by any means. It is simply a description of who this character is, maybe what some of his motivation is. And people have to remember too that when these characters morph, and this was a hugely different Aquaman than any other Aquaman.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was an Aquaman that looked different, that acted different, that had different relationships. And now we introduce an Aquaman that has lost an arm and now has a scepter as an arm. And it's a different Aquaman. So maybe they didn't want to give me too much because it was sort of the same character but different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe not want to try to color your thoughts too much about it.
And when you think about certain characters like that, when you think about Batman and you look at the early 1960s Batman and then you go to many of the other Batmans, it would be an interesting question to see how much they studied those things, because each of those characters, even though it's the same character, it's really a different person.
You're right. Batman is absolutely informed by everything that came before him. So, I mean, that's got to be such a challenge. How do you bring something new, but still keeping within the realm of who that character we've always known them to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It would be fascinating to talk to some of the actors that have portrayed Batman and say, how much did you glean from the other movies? And did you want to see any of it, or did you just want to create your own?
Yeah.
For me, to be honest with you, I was going in, I got the part, I was ready to kind of figure out who this guy was. And a lot of times if the writing is good, and the writing was great on our show, the lines really tell you who this character is too, and what the motivations are and subtext. A well-written script goes a long way to help you understand what's going on with this character.
That's a really good point, yeah.
What's interesting is that George Newbern was our Superman.
Yeah.
George is also a great on-camera actor, and he was the son-in-law on the Father of the Bride movies with Steve Martin back in the day. So I instantly recognized him. And if you listen to George's take on Superman, it's really different. You think of Superman being, I am Superman, right? And he was very real and sort of even soft-spoken at some times. He didn't ever lose his cool, and so it was a very interesting take on Superman.
His take on it was almost like a politician.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great way to put it. So this was a new show with the same characters, but a little different twist with everybody.
Absolutely. And I think to this day, it's one of the greatest superhero cartoons ever made. And like you said, the writing is a big part of that. The music is a big part of that. And of course, your work as voice actors. Many voice actors share this unique anonymity whilst still being extremely recognizable. So for you, I imagine it's even more so given your work in theatrical trailers. Yes?
Yeah, it's awesome because I can be famous when I want to be, but I can still go to restaurants or Disneyland or wherever I want and not be recognized, which is very fun. When I was doing War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise, I went to the theater and I had done a session that day, and I told him I was going to go see the movie that night. And he said, okay, I want to bet you. Walk up to the box office and just do your line from the trailer, Tom Cruise, War of the Worlds, or, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he bet me that I wouldn't do it. Well, I did do it.
No.
I was with some friends, and the girl freaked out, got the manager and said, hey, do that for the manager. And he goes, are you the guy? And I said, yeah. He goes, you don't need any tickets here. And he just let us in. It was very fun.
See,
but I have not abused that privilege. I just, a couple times it's fun to do. And when people say, oh, you're a voice actor, what do you do? I usually pick one of the movies that's currently on, from Marvel, Captain America, whatever, and people instantly get this big smile on their face. Some people say, wow, you really sound like that guy. And well, I am that guy.
I love it.
So it's fun because literally I have so many friends that are on camera, and, it's tough for them to go around because people always recognize them. But over my career, my 33-year career now, I've literally done over 20,000 different kinds of promos and all kinds of stuff. So It affords us to be able to work in the industry. Bill Murray said it best. He said, if you want to be rich and famous, try being rich first and see if that works for you. And nobody has, like, if I'm talking to them like I'm talking to you, nobody's ever said, wow, are you that voice guy? Nobody ever, because they don't even think of it.
Right.
Most people, we're just a part of the fabric that's kind of invisible. And until you actually stand out, it's kind of a weird business, but it's a fun business. And that's what I wanted to do from the time I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
I used to go to Disneyland and listen to the announcer when I was a little kid. And then I'd stay in the first room of the Haunted Mansion to memorize Paul Frees's "When Hinges Creak in Doorless Chambers." The whole speech.
That's awesome.
I was definitely a weird little kid, but I never really wanted to do the on-camera stuff. It was always voice that attracted me. So it's so cool that I've been able to have a career that I wanted from the time I was a child.
Absolutely. And you're in good weird company, I will tell you that, because I was a fellow weird kid. And you mentioned the on-camera stuff. Some actors have said that they don't appreciate the distinction between the words on camera versus voice. Does that bother you at all? Like, do you want to just be referred to as an actor? Or
No, I've always referred to myself as a voice actor.
Okay.
That's my instrument. That's my tool. So I don't take it as any slight. I am a voice actor. I can see where some people, and many on-camera talents, are also voice actors.
Sure.
It used to be a very, very small club of voice actors. But now, because of the expansion of all the different media platforms, there's a lot of work for everybody. There's all kinds of stuff. When I started in this business, there was basically 4 television networks. And today there's a new network every week that needs voiceover for promos. Shows and everything. And with, the internet-based shows, and with all the, sometimes we now do for movie campaigns, we'll do campaigns that are simply for the internet, that they're not even buying TV time.
Oh, wow.
So there's just a lot of cool opportunity for voice actors.
That's good to hear, because it feels sometimes like everything's getting smaller and there's so much competition and there's so many things happening with people coming out of the woodworks, YouTube and what have you. So it's nice to know that there are still opportunities available.
Absolutely. Especially if it's a passion for you. I mean, there's many people that have the same story that I do, that from the time they were kids, somehow they were drawn to either wanting to be in radio and be a disc jockey, or, be a cartoon voice, or whatever it is. If it's a passion for somebody and they're willing to, work hard and go through literally years and years of building a career.
Yes.
I always talk about Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, when people come to me, where he talks about 10,000 hours of consistent effort to find success in any realm. And when I look back at my career, I went to Hollywood in 1986. And in 1996, 10 years later, 10,000 hours later, I got my first movie trailer.
Wow. So see, there you go, folks. Just got to stick with it. Just put in 10,000 hours like it's no big deal, and you'll be there. But it's not just movie trailers and cartoons, though. Like, you've got a solid connection to Disneyland, correct?
Oh, yeah. For a very short period of time after the original voice of Disneyland retired, Jack Wagner, who was one of my heroes and icons, there's a picture of him up in my studio along with Paul Frees and Daws Butler and a lot of great voice actors. I was given the opportunity to become the announcer for Disneyland, and
wow.
Which was so fun to do the whole ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and do the main announcements for like the fireworks and parades. And
did you do the Main Street
voice of Phantasmic?
Oh,
but what a lot of people don't realize is that that's an everyday job, because every day there's different guests in the park. The Colton High School Band, or whatever choirs. And so we would have to do all of that stuff. So literally would go into the studio every day to record those announcements. And it was really a cool experience for me to be able to take my kids into the park and hear my voice on those speakers. I mean, it really was crazy. I had this guy who was a mathematician. He thought in math. I mean, that was his life. And he said, Scott, when you were a little kid, you wanted to be the voice of Disneyland? And I said, yeah. And he said, do you know what the odds of that happening are? Of you actually becoming that voice? And I said, no. He said, there are no odds. It's absolutely impossible. And he said, you did the impossible. But I think that when somebody has a dream like that, there's, people say there's the power of the dream. And I really think that's true. I mean, so I was able to do that for a period of time. And then it was time for me to be done with that because my commercial career and other things were starting just to take up a lot of time. And so my friend Bill Rogers became the voice of Disneyland. And he's been the voice of Disneyland for like 25 years.
Oh,
and
good. Wow.
in fact, we were just there last night, and his wife, Cammie, is the voice of California Adventure. So it's fun. I heard her voice last night, and I heard his voice, and we really have as a community of voice actors, it's really a good bunch of folks. We all encourage each other. If somebody sounds great on something, even something that we were all read for, we congratulate them. And, we're happy. There's plenty of work for everybody to go around. But Bill has been a generation of kids have grown up hearing him. But it was fun for me for a period of time to actually achieve that dream and be able to do that.
I mean, I love that you got to have that happen for you. And I love to hear about the community that is around that industry, because it's just, lest we forget, there are people behind all of these jobs. Somebody has to go and do it. And it's just nice to hear that you guys are one kind of collective brotherhood or sisterhood or however you want to, fraternity. It's just great.
Well, it's interesting because in the early days, now most of us work from home studios that do this kind of work. So when the technology became awesome, so that we could actually have great home studios and work. I work from my house here in Yorba Linda. I work in London a lot because I'm the voice of a lot of the movies over there. I work in New York all the time. I was the voice of the Oprah Winfrey Show, so I worked in Chicago every day.
Wow.
And technology became fantastic. But in the early days, in the 18 years that I spent in Hollywood, we would run into each other constantly. We would see each other at studios, at restaurants, whatever. And the thing that we would say to one another is, see you around campus, because we knew we would see them then, and our campus was Hollywood. And now when we see each other at events or whatever, we always give each other hugs. I may have not physically seen somebody for 3 years, but, these are the voices that have become the fabric of media in this country. And so, it's like I'm watching TV and I'm hearing all of my friends do these commercials or whatever they're doing, right? And so you feel like you know them. And that's another great benefit of being a voice actor.
Well, I love combining things. And one of my favorite attractions has always been Pirates of the Caribbean. And my love for Jolly Roger, the talking skull and crossbones, is a very real thing, too. So I have a unique request for you. If you could do a little recitation of Jolly Roger's speech, because it's a seafaring ride. So I thought maybe you could read that as Aquaman.
I would be happy to. That would be totally fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Psst, avast there. It be too late to alter course, mateys, and there be plunderin' pirates lurkin' in every cove waitin' to board. Sit closer together and keep your ruddy hands inboard. That be the best way to repel boarders. And mark well me words, mateys. Dead men tell no tales. Ye come seekin' adventure and salty old pirates, eh? Sure. You come to the proper place, but keep a weather eye open, mates, and hold on tight with both hands if you please. There be squalls ahead, and Davy Jones waiting for them, what don't obey.
That was awesome. Thank you for doing that for me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. That's fun. I love to do that stuff. People ask me to do their
voicemail
recordings for their voicemails,
Yeah.
In a world where people don't answer their phones, one man will call you back. That kind of stuff,
I love it. That's fantastic. So Justice League versus the Fatal Five comes out on March 30th. And while there is no Aquaman in this story, would you be interested in portraying him again should they ask you for like a direct-to-video film?
Yeah, of course. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, the live action movie is doing really well, so I mean, you never know.
Yes, the live action movie is great. I think after one of my last sessions with Justice League that I was on, I went up to Bruce Timm and said, I have a great idea for a show. And he goes, really? What is it? I said, Aquaman. And he just laughed and kind of rolled his eyes. But it's crazy to see how well this movie is doing. And what's funny is I was reading for the voice of the Aquaman television campaign and trailers and all that. And once I got it and I was actually recording, I said, hey, fun fact. I was the voice of Aquaman. And they said, what do you mean? No, you weren't. And I said, I absolutely was. And I did, I am the born ruler from Atlantis, and they all laughed and thought it was the coolest thing. And for me, it was kind of a full circle thing.
Yeah.
I think it would have been so sad had I not gotten to be the voice of all those commercials. And boy, those were fun commercials to do. And we did a lot of them. I at least did 50 different spots for Aquaman.
So do you guys just like pre-record assuming it's going to be the number one movie? So you do probably a take with now the number one movie in America, that kind of a thing?
Yes, absolutely. This stuff starts way ahead of the release.
Oh.
So there's usually a teaser trailer, then there's trailer 1, trailer 2, maybe trailer 3. Then when we go into the television campaign, and then we do the main spots for it, then we will do the critic reviews. So each review that comes out warrants a new commercial. Rolling Stone says Aquaman is unbelievable, whatever the magazine is. Then if the movie does become fantastic, and in this case they knew that the box office was going to be huge, then we can pre-record. And now Aquaman is the number one movie in America. And we won't just do that. We'll do the number one movie in the world. We'll do, for Canada, the number one movie in the country.
It's too bad you didn't do the number one movie in the 7 seas.
There you go. That's true. We could have done that, yeah. So that's the basic format. But also, whenever we're doing these commercials, sometimes they'll have us do a more kid-friendly spot that they're going to air on Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. It has more fun in the voice. Instead of the action adventure Aquaman, it will be Aquaman, with a big smile. And so, yeah, it's people don't realize really how many commercials there. A lot of people think, there's just one commercial for a movie. But, I've done up to 100 different commercials for a single film. Some of the Marvel films that we've done tons of different work for. So there's a lot that goes into the marketing of these films. But right now, I'm just enjoying what I do. Every time I get a script and my agent calls and says it's time to go into the studio, which, by the way, I think people would be fascinated by, is that this is a very last-minute industry. I mean, they will literally call me and say, can you get in the booth in 5 minutes? Many times the scripts are arriving as I get into the studio because they've just finished being written and now they want to test them and see how they look. So this is not a business where we get 3 days notice. We don't even get a day's notice. I mean, literally, I wake up in the morning and I don't know what I'm going to be doing that day. It's kind of like a firefighter where the alarm goes off and you slide down the pole and you're doing your job. And so that's the way it works for us. I was doing a kind of a scary movie and the director said, I want you to try like almost no voice. And so it was like, how do you kill what's already dead? And it's like, it really worked. And then that really became a thing where you started hearing these horror movies with these voices that weren't going, how do you kill what's already dead? It was more just, this very kind of right here, kind of creepy kind of. And that's another thing that Dawes taught me. He taught me mic technique. And he said, never forget that the mic will pick up every nook and cranny. And I remember when I did that first trailer and I went to the theater and heard my voice, it was spectacular. It was like that sound system, the way the mic worked, the mix, everything. And so as voice actors, sometimes the greatest film actors, they're not very broad. They're just, you can get just a eyebrow raise and it changes the whole scene, right?
Absolutely.
So it's the same thing with voice acting, the way you would touch one word. Dawes used to say you touch it with the same weight as the dust on a moth's wing. It's to make all the difference.
That's beautiful.
And yeah,
I think it's because it forces the audience to listen.
that's a good point. Because actually, when I first heard George Newbern doing Superman, I was thinking, oh, this is interesting. There's not a lot of big, powerful, but the way he said the words and the way he approached it, which was very, very kind of real and many times conversational, was really good. It was like, oh, yeah, this really does work.
Well, you got to imagine it's a character who has essentially godlike power at his fingertips. So he probably is constantly thinking like, I better dial it back or I'm going to terrify everybody,
Yeah. And then there was me going, I don't care who you are.
No, but that's perfect because Aquaman was totally like, get out of my water. Like he was all about the glory of Atlantis. And so I think for that character, it worked perfectly,
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending time with us today, Scott. It has been truly eye-opening getting to know you and your work, and really a real treat having you here.
Oh, thank you. I really enjoyed it. I love talking about this stuff. It's my passion, and
clearly
it's been my life for the last 30 years plus years. So, I appreciate you having this venue to talk about this stuff because, there's a lot of people that don't even think about the voices that they're hearing every day, all day long. It's just nothing to them. And so when somebody is actually like, wow, I want to know how that works, because that's the way I was as a kid. I was like, I got to figure out how this works. I got to figure out how I can become a part of this industry. And so it's always fun to be able to talk about this stuff. So thanks for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And I wish you nothing but continued success, of course. And hopefully we get to hear you in some more cartoons down the road.
That would be fun. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you. Bye. That was a track from the Justice League animated series episode, The Enemy Below, titled Aquaman's Legacy, composed by Michael McQuistion. Michael is part of the composer trio Dynamic Music Partners, and to this day continues to score animated films and series for DC Comics. This includes the recent return season of Young Justice and the all-new direct-to-video film Justice League vs. the Fatal Five, which is available now on digital and on physical media April 16th. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Special thanks go out to Scott Rummell once again for joining us here on the show. Thanks so much to my sponsor, Austin Film Meet. And of course, thanks to all of you watching live on Twitch. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you would like to support Stay Tuned, join me over on Patreon at patreon.com/Phil Machi to become a subscriber today. With cool rewards like exclusive interview outtakes, you can also stream this show anytime you like, which means never missing an episode. For more fun, check out my original comic books at retailsunshine.com, and you can interact with me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under the handles of both Retail Sunshine and Phil Machi. Also, you can keep up to date with the latest animation news by visiting this show at facebook.com/Stay Tuned Show. I've been Phil Machi, you've been a wonderful audience, and until next time, keep those eyeballs peeled, those ears open, and be sure to stay tuned. Alrighty. Okay. I do have a sponsor now. Well, first of all, welcome to the after party, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking with me through another episode of Stay Tuned, episode number 42, as it were. And if you missed part of the show, that's okay. It's going to be on YouTube tomorrow, and it'll be slightly trimmed down, so none of the stuff you're seeing right now, of course. This all gets reserved for people who are here live, or, of course, people who subscribe on Patreon, which I should mention right now. I have some people I have to mention because I have Rubber Hose subscribers to thank. Every week they get a shout out for being so awesome and for being